Today, let's talk about planning our Disney vacation for 2020. If you're still on the fence about whether you want to visit Disney World in 2020, please check out my video, Should I Cancel My Disney Vacation? There I go through the pros and cons of visiting this year. Short answer, it really depends on your situation, how often you've been, what's important to you about your vacation, that kind of thing. So please check that video out, and while you're at it, please like this video and subscribe below, and let's get to it. All right, if you're planning to go this year, I'm assuming that you already know some pretty basic things, but I'm gonna review them real quick just to make sure. I wanna make sure that you know that park hours are limited for the duration of this year. The parks are not open at night. Generally speaking, the parks are opening at 9, 10, or 11 in the morning, and they're staying open till 5, 6, or 7 at night. They did recently extend the November hours by 1 hour every day in most of the parks, but that still means 7 o'clock versus 6 o'clock, 6 o'clock versus 5 o'clock. We're not talking, parks are not open until midnight or whenever. If you've traveled during the holiday season before, you're probably used to pretty long days because that is a busy season for Disney World, and generally the park hours reflect the busy season, so the parks are usually open by 8 o'clock in the morning and they're still open at midnight. That's my favorite time to be there, but it's not happening right now. Also, there are no extended extra magic hours for staying at a resort right now. So that perk is absent at the moment, partly because of capacity and partly, I think, for logistics. They just can't really manage it right now. So parks are all open in a limited capacity, which means a fraction of what normal park capacity is. So if normal park capacity is 50,000 people, they might be limiting the crowd to 10 to 12,000 people per day. Does that make sense? You are required to have a park reservation for each day you plan to visit a Walt Disney World theme park. That is meaning that you have to have your park ticket and a park reservation for the park you plan to visit on the day you plan to visit it in order to get into the park. It's really, really important. This is a new step. We're going to talk about it in more detail. For all guests over the age of 2, and they are required at all times. Disney has specifically stated the only time you can remove your mask is when you are sitting or standing and eating. Otherwise, your mask must be on. So it doesn't matter if you're staying with your group and you're walking around, they want your mask on, okay? So know that if you are anti-mask, you cannot go to Disney this year. They are not flexible at all on the mask thing. Masks prevent disease, and they are determined to adhere to that. So we've got shorter hours, we've got lighter crowds, which is great. Fast passes are not active right now, so you do not have to worry about fast pass reservations. All meal reservations made prior to the park's closing were canceled for the duration of 2020, which means if you did make your reservation 6 months prior to your trip, those reservations are gone. So just kind of know, doesn't matter, they're gone. You are allowed to make reservations 60 days prior to your trip. If you're a Disney Resort guest, you can make your reservations for any meals 60 days prior to your trip. Otherwise, it's 30 days like normal. But a park reservation, if you're eating at a park restaurant, park reservation and a ticket to the park is required in order to get in for your reservation. All right, so let's talk about a couple of things. Number one, once you have decided when you want to go, and that's based on a few factors. For us, our dates of choice were tied to our wedding anniversary this year. So we got married on November 16th back in 2014. I wanted our trip to be sometime around November 16th. Next for me was looking for resort availability. So that played a big factor on when we were going. So we're actually going the Monday before our anniversary, and we're actually leaving on our anniversary. But I'm in the neighborhood of our anniversary, so I'm calling it an anniversary trip. The first question for you is, are you flying or driving? For us, we're driving. We live in Chicago. So it's about a 17-hour drive for us. My husband's a truck driver, so he's used to long drives, and I have had driving jobs at various times in my life, so I'm pretty used to long drives. So we most likely will drive straight through, making turns, driving. But alternatively, we've done trips in the past where we've driven down and stopped somewhere in Tennessee for the night. Just sort of depends on how we're feeling. So for us, we don't want to fly right now. We don't feel super safe flying right now, so we're gonna drive. that's a decision that we've made. Now, we also are people that rent cars when we go. Normally, I sort of feel like we're saving money by driving this time. So it's the right decision for us. It's not the right decision for everybody. You've got to make your own decisions. Airfares right now are ridiculously low because the airlines are trying to kind of get back in gear. You know, if you feel safe flying, I say go for it. There's some really great airfares out there to find. If you are a Disney resort guest, you do not have to rent a car. We do because I'm a total control freak and I have to have a car. But Disney transportation is all free if you're a Disney resort guest. So if you are staying on Disney property, you can use Disney Magical Express to get from the airport to your resort and back. And you can use bus transportation, monorail transportation, train transportation, boat transportation, Skyliner transportation, all for free. You don't have to pay for any of it. It's all part of your resort stay. So you don't need a car. I just have to have one because I'm crazy like that. So that's kind of your first decision, is your airfare, taking care of your airline reservations, and determining whether or not you're going to rent a car. You know, again, if you're a resort guest, you don't need to rent a car. If you're staying off property, you probably do need to rent a car to get to and from Disney. But be cognizant of the fact that you will have to pay to park at the parks. It's not free. For us, it's free because we're DVC members, Disney Vacation Club members, so we can park for free. But all other resort guests, you pay to park at your resort, and if you go to the parks, you pay to park at the parks. If you're staying off property, you pay to park at the parks. So just keep that in mind. A lot of the larger hotel chains do offer shuttles to and from Disney, and with the shorter park hours right now, that can be super easy to take advantage of because it's real predictable. If you're not planning a day from 9 to midnight with perhaps an afternoon break, dealing with the shuttle schedule isn't as difficult as when the park opens at 9 and it closes at 5. So something to keep in mind if you're staying off property. Does your hotel offer a shuttle? A lot of the hotels do. So just check into that and find out if you have to pay for it. Second is the big thing. Where are you going to stay? I am a huge proponent of staying on Disney property. I love Disney property. I love being in the Disney bubble. I love once we get on Disney property, we don't leave generally, other than to maybe go to Perkins and the outskirts, our restaurant. Where to stay? My first choice is always Disney property, but for economical reasons, a lot of times it's not practical to stay in Disney property. Disney has a lot of good neighbor hotels that are slightly more economical than most Disney properties. And then of course there are other hotels that are further afield, but you do have to factor in that paying to park at the park, because if you're saving $25 a day to stay off property, but then you're spending a half hour to an hour in traffic to get to the park, and then you're paying $25 to park at the park, is it really worth it? So that's a decision you have to make. For us, 99% of the time we stay on property. Occasionally on some bigger trips, we've rented houses off-site. There's some benefits to that. But for this trip, my husband and I are staying on property. There was never a doubt. The big decision for us was which resort. And not all the resorts are back open. A lot of you may fall into that category that's kind of the middle of the road, moderate, which is a really good level to stay at. You don't have quite all the perks of a deluxe resort, but you have slightly more perks than the value resorts. The rooms are slightly bigger. I like the moderates better than the values, and for the most part, except for the Art of Animation. If you're not sure, there are 4 levels of Disney hotels and the prices rise accordingly. So the lowest level is the value, and they're small rooms, small bathrooms, tight quarters. Generally a food court is your restaurant option. Generally buses are your transportation option. The one exception to that is Pop Century and Art of Animation. They do share a Skyliner station, so they are on the Skyliner line. Art of Animation is slightly larger, nicer, more themed value resort, but it's priced accordingly. So you've got the values, and then you've got kind of the value plus, which is Art of Animation. Then above that is the moderates, which is resorts like Coronado Springs, Caribbean Beach, and Port Orleans. Port Orleans and Coronado Springs are not open to resort guests this time. I don't believe they're going to open until next year. And then you've got the deluxe resort, which is the highest, most expensive round. That's your Grand Floridian, your Contemporary, your Polynesian, your Boardwalk, the more popular Yacht Club, the resorts with more amenities. Generally, they're walking distance to a theme park, or they're on the monorail line, or they've got more restaurant options. Usually there's a table service and a quick service, sometimes 2 or 3. For example, the Contemporary Resort has California Grill. It has Chef Mickey's, which is a character meal, plus it has a couple of quick service options as well. So the deluxe resorts are going to have more overall options and generally more transportation options for you as well. But they're priced accordingly. So where we usually stay is at Bay Lake Tower, which is the DVC property, goes with the Contemporary Resort. So we're walking distance from the Magic Kingdom, which is my heart, and that's usually where we stay. We like it over there. This trip, however, I wanted to do a 1-bedroom villa because I knew that we had other things on our agenda. I knew the theme park hours were shorter. I knew we might not be eating out every night. We definitely wouldn't be eating out for breakfast. So I wanted a kitchen where I could buy groceries and I could cook. So for this specific trip, I wanted a 1-bedroom villa. So we are still staying in TVC, but we're staying at Old Key West in a 1-bedroom villa. And basically, Old Key West is a DVC resort located in about the middle of Disney property. So we're pretty close to Disney Springs over there, and it's not that far from Hollywood Studios or Epcot, a little farther from Magic Kingdom and Animal Kingdom, but almost everything is. So that's why I decided to stay there. I like that resort. I stay there frequently with my mom. It's a really nice resort, and it's the oldest DVC resort, so the rooms tend to be bigger than the newer DVC resorts. And for this trip, we wanted room to spread out. We wanted a kitchen. We wanted to feel a little bit more homey because we're not going to be spending as much time in the parks as we normally do on one of our trips. So that's a factor, and you do want to consider that. When I have clients that want to stay at a value resort, I often will say, sure, go ahead, stay at a value resort because you're not going to be in your room very often. And if you don't mind if the quarters are tight and you're just going to sleep there, it doesn't matter, right? This trip, park hours are shorter. We're going to be spending a lot more time away from the parks, not necessarily in our room, but perhaps at our resort. As I mentioned before, we're going to be house hunting as well, so we may be out and about, but I did want the option to cook dinners, cook breakfasts, the occasional lunch at our resort. So that was the right decision for us. In the next video, we're going to talk about ticket options, choosing which parks you're going to visit on which day and what goes into that, and thinking about dining options and whether or not you should make dining reservations. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Again, I'm Brooke from Disney Castle Dreaming Travel. Please like this video and subscribe to get the next one. And I look forward to helping you plan all your Disney adventures in the future. Happy dreaming.